Thanks so much for doing the interview. I'm super excited to talk to you about the album. And I, I was just saying actually, and I'm not just saying this, like your management sent us out the album, and it's been on our turntable for the last 2 weeks. Like I've had it on
Ah,
recently. So I just want to start off by saying like congratulations on writing such a great like album. It's beautiful. It really is.
thank you so much, and thank you for that taking that time to listen so intentionally like that. That is so meaningful for artists when people take the time to listen in that way. So very, very much appreciated. Thank you.
No problem at all. I wanted to kind of start off by saying so obviously it feels to me like with this album, you're writing at a very particular time in history and from a very specific perspective. And I know I've read over some of your past interviews. You know, you were very honest on the last album, sort of Tasjan. Um,
Yeah.
does it get any easier writing from that perspective? Because again, this is a very honest album, and I often wonder with songwriters how it feels to you know, put it out there into the world and think, well, man, this is like someone reading my diary or something like that.
Sure. Yeah. Does it get easier? I think my experience is that generally speaking, as you go on, songwriting actually gets more difficult over time. Just songwriting, generally speaking. Um, and so, you kind of have to. It's one of those things where you just kind of get out of it what you put into it. It's like playing the lottery or something. The more times you step up to the machine and pull the lever, the better your chances are of coming out with, something that you're really excited about. And in this case, on this particular record, I think, it was really just an innate, sort of very biological, response to what's been happening, certainly in America and certainly here in Tennessee, but all over the world. I mean, we've had some really wacky laws get passed down here. At one point, a county, not Davidson County, but not far from where we are here in Nashville, they successfully outlawed being a gay person for a short period of time. So, but then you read about everything that's happening in Uganda right now, and you think like this is not a problem that just is uniquely American. This is happening all over the world, and as a queer person myself, like I've just I couldn't sit back and watch my community just be relentlessly attacked and dehumanized and not say anything about it.
You've done a great job of sort of setting out your thoughts on that. And it feels to me, listening to the album, one thing that really came across to me and that you've done amazingly well on this album is it feels to me, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, that underneath you're kind of an optimist at heart. It feels like that. And I think
Definitely.
done very well is there are songs on here that deal with some really strong stuff. Like a couple of the darker ones are sort of Nightmare and I Love America. And what I
Sure.
love that you've done now, you've set them to these kind of upbeat synth like driving tunes. But it's like so the first time I was listening to it, I was like, did he just say what I thought? He said like it really pulled me in to listen to the lyrics. And it's a great way of doing it, I think. Get people into that music and then they start listening. Oh, what's he saying there? Like
I heard Tom Waits once describe this concept as beautiful melodies telling me terrible things, which I relate to, in a lot of different ways. But I sort of thought, even conceptually speaking, on a song like "I Love America," like that song is kind of exploring to me lyrically, you know, the parts of America that Americans seem sort of less sure about or less willing to think about, talk about, push into the harsh light of day. In that way, it's almost like we're living this very interesting, we're watching this very interesting scene play out in our country where we tout these very specific values of freedom and and the American dream and all of these things. Um, but when you look at what we're actually doing,
Yeah.
oftentimes it feels in direct opposition to that. And so I thought, conceptually speaking, musically, a track that has that same kind of balance to it, of this sort of off kilterness with this kind of like very kind of hi-fi pop type production. That's essentially the lyric and the chord progression. The acoustic guitar is like a protest song, like a Woody Guthrie song or something like that. I thought it was a kind of interesting way to explore the duality of that, in a musical sense as well as a lyrical one.
I think there's even some, when I listened to that as well, there were a couple of lines that made me like, you've even added some kind of humor into the lyric itself. Like I loved, what was the line? Not sure if sparklers and $20 parking is going to get me give an eagle scream. I love that lyric. I love it. But it's a really nice way of putting it as well, in a sort of way that people might make people listen. It also made me think of, I saw an interview with Jason Isbell a while
Yeah.
back, talking about how in his shows he will now try and sort of, play outfit or something that everybody wants to hear, and then right after throw in like White Man's World or something like that. Where he's like, "Here, I want to say something to you," and he's like, because people were just walking out and those songs were coming on. Some of the audience, I mean, not much of his audience now, I guess, but
Sure, yeah.
it's the same kind of idea. Is like, let's try and get that message across, but not be sort of hammering it down your throat, right?
Yeah. I think I keep coming back to this idea that if we really want to change someone's mind, that love is the way that we really are able to do that, because it's in the moment where we're being, um we're not letting anyone eschew their accountability so far as, um, outdated ideas and concepts that they might still be holding on to. But, um, the way that we move that needle, the way that we, loosen the grip that those sort of outdated concepts have on a person is, through acts of love and kindness and empathy. It's in that moment of that expression towards another person, they're unguarded. They don't have their defenses up. They don't feel the need to dig in further to where they've already been, because you're softening, and so it allow it you're mirroring that action for them. You're allowing them to see you become softer, and then they can do the same thing, and then you can start to have a conversation. But until you get to that place, and that's a hard place to be, um particularly in this day and age. I think, there we've gone, at least I feel like in America, we've gone a long ways away from this idea that when you vote, you're voting for everyone, not just for you and for your own agenda. Everything's become so, it's really wacky, because everything has become so personalized at the same time as we're dehumanizing everyone. So it's like this just sea of very heavy, messy emotions, just constantly waves crashing into each other. And I think it's in those moments that we soften, and allow the other person to see us be vulnerable in that way that we're disagreeing with. And then they feel like they don't have to be as hard lined in their stance. And then that opens you up to start to be able to have a conversation.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I know you tour a lot, and I don't know what your perspective is. Because so last year for the website, we traveled across the US, right?
Wow.
We were doing something for independent venues, and we interviewed owners of independent venues, but we basically drove, well, I rode a motorcycle across the South. We started in Brooklyn and we went to LA. And
Incredible.
we were staying at trailer parks and things like that. And actually, after the trip, I was more optimistic because I spoke to a lot of people on that trip who had probably pretty divergent views to me politically and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you know what? We had a really nice conversation. There's
Yeah.
didn't agree on. But we were talking face to face, and I think it makes such a difference. So we talked to these people. They said things. I'm like, oh, maybe I don't agree with that so much, and this, and well, I don't agree with you. Like, what do you want to live in Chicago for? I'm like, Chicago's a really great city. Like, I've made it my home. But
Yeah.
we had these discussions, and I came away from it thinking, I think a big chunk of this is this noise made on the extremes in this environment, like online, where there's no consequences for people saying whatever they want. So they say the most horrible stuff. And
Right.
I didn't know because I'm also very aware that I viewed that trip through my lens, right? As a white
Mm.
middle-aged guy, like straight guy. So I don't know whether you have that same experience when it's face to face, that it tends to be different.
Interesting. Yeah. This is such a great, this is such a great thing to think about. And it's one of those things where you have to really think about it to make sure that your mind isn't going into story mode. Do you know what I mean when I say story mode? Like our brains will sometimes tell us things that aren't real, and you kind of have to recognize when that's happening, because, and particularly in situations like this, because I've had experiences face to face with people in Tennessee, for example, where I really don't know what happened exactly. It seemed like for a minute that perhaps it was about to get kind of ugly, and then it didn't, and then they just walk away, and I'm very confused after that happens. I'll give you an example. We have a very cool music and arts festival here in East Nashville called the Tomato Festival, and we do it every year. And it's a really cool thing for the community, and kind of brings everybody together. And it's all local bands and great artwork and stuff. And um, they had made one year a T-shirt celebrating the Tomato Festival that had a big picture of a tomato on the front of it, and then over top of the tomato they'd written the word "Uniter" because they felt like the tomato brought people together. So I'm walking into the corner deli one day with my friend from out of town, and I have on my Tomato Fest Uniter t-shirt. And there's a pickup truck parked right in front of the door of the deli, and there's nobody else in the parking lot. And the window on the truck rolls down, and this guy who looked like a lost member of like ZZ Top meets Ian McKellen in that one movie where he has the big long white beard or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this guy, like, he rolls his window down and he leans out of his window and he says, "Hey," and we're just like, "Yeah, what's up?" he's like, "I see you're a uniter, huh?" And we're like, "Oh, you mean the T-shirt? Yeah, it's like for this thing called the Tomato Festival or what." And before I could even finish the sentence, he goes, "Well, I'm a divider."
Okay.
And this dude is like 100% serious, like not joking around at all. Like, and I'm just starting to think to myself, like, where on earth are we headed right now? Like, what's about to happen here, you know? And so the guy like starts to get out of his truck, and I started getting really nervous. So I was like, I said something really like dumb, like that just kind of confused him. I said something like, well, hey, if I'm a uniter and you're a divider, like we should like get our picture taken together and put it on Instagram so that people can like see the whole story or something weird like that. And he kind of like didn't know what to do with that. And in his moment of silence, as he's like standing next to his truck, we just kind of walked in the door,
Yeah.
just kind of walked away. But it's like, you know, like what's that?
What was
You
the
know what
point?
I mean? Like, what was the purpose? Where was he? What was his intention? Like, I have no idea. I really am just totally baffled every time I think about that interaction. And I can't, like, I say this to say, like, I can't take it inherently as a negative one because I don't really know what his intention
Where it
was.
was gonna go. Yeah, I see what you mean.
But like I probably had some lip gloss on or something like that. You know what I mean? Like as a person who is sometimes viewed as being a little different than other people or whatever, like it was definitely sending off,
Yeah.
okay, be
Yeah.
really careful with it. Like you don't know where this is going. Like now's the time to be on high alert because this guy could be taking this God knows where. So I've had moments like that. I have had experiences like what you mentioned, where you're having a face-to-face conversation with someone that you don't agree with, but I think maybe because there's that accountability that we have to each other in a social setting to observe some form of respect, toward one another or whatever. I think those conversations feel a lot more open
Yeah.
than they do in a comment section, because in the comment section you're right, you're not looking at anybody, you don't have to see someone's eyes and watch their heart sink when you say something to them that really hurts their feelings. You can just say kind of whatever, and you don't have to feel
Yeah.
anyway as a result of it. So it's a really interesting time in that way. But what I'm trying really hard to do for myself, just so I don't go completely insane, is really recognize the times
Yeah.
when something actually bad is happening,
Yeah.
versus the times where it just feels like maybe something bad might be happening. I don't really know, and then it just whatever, things just sort of move on or whatever, and you think back on it and you're just like, huh,
Yeah.
well, okay. That was weird, but whatever.
Like with this record, it's like a perfect, like in a nutshell of where you are at the moment as well. Because there's also some like super optimistic, like fun tracks on there, like "Cry Till You're Laughing" and "Pants." Both of those I love. Um,
Thank you.
and in "Pants," I think I read in some of the back like that started out as something different, and then you've turned it into this like funk kind of groove, which is awesome. By the way, I think that's one of my favorite tracks on the album.
Thank you so much.
And just a great lyric, right? Like just wear what you want, do what you want, do what you want.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, I just feel like if we people talk about, the idea of, I hate the word normal. It's one word that I really, it just gets tossed around all the time. I feel like as though it's real. It's not. I don't feel like being normal is objectively true,
Yeah,
because people are also unique. A song like Pants like comes right out of that realization of just like there is no such thing as normal. There's only who we are, and who we are even there's many perceptions of that. There's the self-perception, the perception of others, um, and so when we're saying like, oh, don't do that because people will think this, or don't say that because people will blah 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 blah, or whatever. It's really, that's a moment when, that's a fear-based response um to the complexity of humanity.
Yeah.
There's always more there than I think we want to see. And seeing all that there is can feel really scary because there might be parts of it that are, hard to look at. But I think it's in the seeing of those harder things to look at that we start to understand that those things are not uncommon things. They're not things that um, trauma, or they're not something that only you had to deal with. In the examination of those parts of your life, you see and understand how this is something that affects many many people. And that's always my goal as a songwriter, is to try to find ways to write songs that show people the ways in which we're all connected.
And did the album, Aaron, did you start with an idea of what you wanted this album to be, or did it sort of come together along the way?
I thought I did. I thought, yeah. I mean, I did have it. It didn't end up that the way that I had initially thought of doing it. And I think and that's the trick of making a record. I think in certain ways, like it's probably smart to have an intention,
Yeah.
um, but you sort of see the ways in which the process also defines the intention as you're going through it. So you make room for the idea that you have a specific intention, but then the process is also going to guide that intention as well. And for me, I always end up somewhere kind of between those two places. And that always feels exciting because it feels like something I didn't quite plan for and probably couldn't have
Yeah.
exactly planned for. Um, but it always ends up feeling like me,
Yeah.
and that's like the big goal, I guess.
That's what you've done. It's an album that, like, I can't, and honestly, I'm embarrassed to say, like, we only came across you probably, what would it have been? It's probably pre-COVID when you were touring with Butch Walker.
Oh yeah, I love Butch, man.
So we saw you there, and I was like, man, that was awesome. And then I like went and got your albums that you'd released to date, and I'm like, this is super interesting stuff, because hearing the way and this is what I really sort of admire with you, like hearing the way that your music's changed and become I guess the only way I could describe, I put something online like this the other day. The only way I can describe this album is it's great, because if anyone said, well, what genre is that? I'd be like, I don't know. it's, it's good.
Yes.
It's good. It's just good. But,
Victory.
but it, in in such a way that these songs are all their own thing, but they fit together. And I can't, like, when I'm talking to people, that's a really hard thing to do. And
Yeah.
and you've done it here. So I guess one thing I was interested about, because I love, well, guitar, as you can probably tell. I mean, you start
Yes.
a guitar player. I'm more a collector than a player. You started out really a guitarist, right? And I mean, I guess and you band you into that kind of like alt Americana sort of space when you first started, and then you've just progressed. Was it just a natural thing for you? Like, did you decide to change the way you were writing and what you were writing? Or was it just like you thought you'd open yourself up to anything?
Yeah, I think all, any songwriter on some level is going to be a reflection of the music that they've absorbed, previously. So there's that, and that's tricky because, influence is um certainly, present in anyone's work. But I think, where influence starts to feel more like an imitation is where there isn't that added element of what is clearly belongs to the artist that they've brought to whatever that style, genre, form, whatever you want to call it, might be. Initially, I think writing, songs for record, because I always wrote songs, but I really only, started releasing my own songs that I was writing in like 2014. So once I started kind of writing songs, specifically to release, all of these other factors come into play there because people all of a sudden, whoever your distributor is asking you, then, well, what's the genre of this? If you're pitching it for playlists on Spotify, what playlists are you pitching it? There's all these kind of things suddenly that you have to think about. I've tried really hard not to let those ever enter into the creative space. I really try hard to start with the music, something that feels exciting and interesting to me. And then if I can honestly say that, and sometimes it takes a couple weeks or even a month or however long to figure out if I really can say that about a song. Like the most dangerous songs are the ones that feel like they're great,
Yeah.
but they're not. you know like you can see almost like what you meant to do with it, but you didn't quite make it there somehow, and part of the process is being honest about when that moment happens and being willing to let go. I think that one thing that's helped me always sort of be feel like I'm breaking ground for myself musically is the willingness to let go of past successes, because I have been, successful in Americana music where I've, been nominated for several awards, both in the UK and in America, by the Americana Music Association. I've been nominated for a Grammy for songwriting for Best American Roots Song, and I've had, big wins in that world. And I don't think of what I'm doing now as being any less Americana than anything that I've done previously. But I think that's more of my own thing because I just don't like genre is kind of meaningless to
Yeah.
me because since I was like 11 years old. You know what I mean? Like it would be like, okay, now I'm going to listen to Boys to Men. Then I'm going to listen to Smashing Pumpkins. Then I'm going to listen to the Pat Metheny Trio. Then I'm going to listen to Bela Fleck and the Flecktones. And then I'm going to listen to Marshall Crenshaw. You know what I mean? Like it would just be, and I'm not even like making that up. That's probably like I probably had a day in the back of the car or whatever when I listened to all of that stuff, as a kid on my headphones. So, it really at a certain point, yeah, it just becomes about like recognizing like, man, I listen to a lot of music. I'm not necessarily the kind of person who feels that I am a punk or I am, a cowboy and therefore need to live my whole life, in that aesthetic. I feel that there's wisdom, magic and music to be gleaned from all kinds of artists, musicians, bands, labels, styles of music, etc. And I feel like as a musician, I would only be limiting my own potential by not, studying those influences and finding ways to incorporate them into my own music using my own voice.
That's a great answer. It's a good one. I think I could talk to you all day, Aaron, but I think we're at time.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful interview. I really enjoyed it.
Too. And congratulations on a fantastic album. I can't wait to see
Thank you.
it live.
Cheers. Have a good one, brother.
You too.